welcome to the latest episode of Daily Debrief brought to you by People's Dispatch. I'm Shreya Singh and today we begin with a big blow to Joe Biden's administration. Virtually the entire world voted decisively at the UN General Assembly on Thursday against the economic embargo of Cuba by the United States. In our next story, Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan was injured in an attempt on his life during his long march from Lahore to Islamabad, which began last week to demand fresh elections. And finally, we also take a look today at the politics around the vaccine for monkeypox. A permanent pandemic, a constant hurricane, is how the Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez described the effects of the 6 decades of US blockade on Cuba. The US economic blockade of Cuba is in its 60th year. It's a blockade that cost Cubans 15 million US dollars a day in lost economic and trade opportunities with the world. The heavy humanitarian cost has prompted the world to condemn it in a vote at the UN General Assembly. All joined except for the United States itself and Israel, who opposed it while only 2 countries, Brazil and Ukraine, abstained. Natalia Marquez from People's Dispatch joins us for more. Hi Natalia, thank you for joining us today. So, similar votes have been passed at the UNGA earlier and in the last 60 years, but why is it not a success that the sanctions have not been lifted? What's the reason?
Yeah, so this vote has been held for 30 years, so basically half the time that the blockade has been implemented, the UN has voted, and the world always overwhelmingly votes against the blockade. There are several reasons that a lot of activists point to. I think one of the central ones is that lifting the sanctions, lifting the blockade would allow Cuba to prosper, right? Even despite the blockade, Cuba has had so many achievements, 5 COVID vaccines, excellent hurricane preparedness, really like centering the Cuban people in every sort of policy decision they make. Without the blockade, Cuba could very well prosper and its centrally planned economy could become a model of socialism, right? Cuba is a socialist country, and by keeping a socialist country poor, the US can point to that as evidence that an alternative system does not work, right? Theorize around that essential reason, right? So without the blockade, Cuba could prosper. The US does not want that sort of example set for a planned economy. And so, keeping Cuba poor is a really essential way that many activists think that capitalists essentially preserve the system.
And Natalia, time and again, US has, said that the embargo is for helping the Cuban people or it is for, advancing democracy in Cuba. But the devastation is hard to ignore. The economic devastation caused by the sanctions, it's very palpable. Can you give us a little details? What is the economic difficulties brought on by the embargo and what does it mean to the people?
Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez spoke a lot to this right before the UN vote yesterday. So according to his figures, Cuban people have lost more than $1 trillion total since the implementation of the blockade in 1962. Al Jazeera also estimates like around 1 trillion for the total amount when counting for inflation and whatnot. And the figures are 15 million every single day. And with the new sanctions that Trump imposed and Biden continues largely, those sanctions have cost 3.8 billion. And those are Donald Trump imposed 243 new sanctions. Some of them Biden lifted, the worst of which Biden has not lifted. And so these, in addition to the economic blockade since 1962, have been absolutely economically devastating. Cuba also continues to be on the state sponsors of terrorism list. And also under President Barack Obama in 2016, the US abstained from voting against the blockade, and Trump once again voted against. Throughout his presidency, Biden is staying faithful to that policy and voting against continually as he did in 2021, when again overwhelmingly people voted for lifting the blockade, right? And so these are like the I guess, $1 trillion is not something that we can really think about very clearly in our head what would be the actual, impact of that. But I mean, it's nothing short of devastating, and nothing short of extremely cruel to continue to implement this blockade.
Thank you, Natalia, for joining us today on this update. Former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan has been on a long cross-country tour, drumming up public support for his party and his own leadership. He has also been opposing any role of the military in the political affairs of the country. On Thursday, a gunman made an attempt on his life during his tour, killing one man and injuring 8, including Khan. Since he lost the vote of confidence in the parliament earlier this year, Khan has blamed military generals for his fall from power. But it's also known that sections in the military had supported his rise. Abdul from People's Dispatch is here with us in the studio with latest updates. Hi Abdul. So, what is the situation right now after the attack?
Today being Friday, there were protest calls, and as per the latest reports, there are protests going on in different parts of Pakistan, different cities, particularly in the bigger cities in Lahore, in Rawalpindi, and in other places. In some places, there are reports of violence also. Meanwhile, there is already a claim and counterclaim between the PTI and the government in Pakistan, central government in Pakistan, which is basically blaming that the Punjab government, which is of course held by PTI, is responsible for the failure of the security, which led to the attack. And they're demanding a joint investigation between the federal government and the state of Punjab. Meanwhile, Imran Khan had accused 3 individuals being responsible for the attack, people from army and people from the government, which has become a bigger issue, particularly because the central interior minister in the central government, in the federal government, has basically raised questions about naming it, particularly because that the claim is there are political differences between the PTI and the ruling establishment in Pakistan, but how can you name someone without any proof? These are the things which are going on post the attack yesterday. Meanwhile, there was a meeting held by Imran Khan from the hospital itself, where he's admitted. And as per the latest reports, Imran Khan has said that the march to Islamabad will continue, it will not stop. And he has demanded that the central government take action against the people he has named as responsible for attack.
And the shock that it was, the attack, what have been some of the reactions to this whole incident?
I think most of the people, including the persons in the army, the higher ranks in the army, have issued formal public condemnation. There are celebrities in the country who are also, it seems, have kind of expressed their regret about the incident. And it seems the people, at least when we say that there is an anger. Some of the PTI leaders have been accused of instigating violence by the federal government post the news of the attack. But some of the PTI leaders have also issued asking the people not to get agitated, but to take it as a political challenge. Since there is a history of such kind of political assassinations in Pakistan, beginning with 1951, Liaquat Ali Khan, then Benazir Bhutto in 2007, that basically creates a kind of public anger against such move. Because when Benazir Bhutto was killed in 2007, there was a huge round of violence all across Pakistan. So similar incidents should not happen this time. That's what the PTI leadership, at least it looks like from the news reports, that they don't want such kind of violence at this moment. And therefore, the announcement of the continuance of the march basically may prove a kind of counter to any violent movement at this moment.
And such marches, they have been held, although this was a part of when the attack happened, it was a part of a larger march. But Imran Khan has been holding marches. What is the significance of all of this, given the elections are due next year?
I think he is building pressure both on the government and pressure on the government and a kind of a long popularity, a popular base for himself. So the continuous rallies, the continuous mobilization of his rank and file basically creates a possibility that the swing voters or the voters who do not belong to a particular party will ultimately fall for Imran's popularity, given his continuous presence on the street. These mobilizations also basically keeps the PTI, the cadres of the PTI active, and that is important. So no matter when the elections are announced, it seems that this is a part of the strategy to basically keep the cadres active. And if we see the results which are coming from whatever elections so far have been held, including the by-elections for the National Assembly, it looks like PTI has no popular rival. So that basically that shows that the strategy of mobilizing the cadre, keeping them on the ground all the time, basically is working for the time being.
Thank you so much, Abdul, for joining us today. And in our final story for today, in August this year, the WHO declared the monkeypox outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. Yet countries around the world are waiting to get access to its vaccine called Jynneos. Interestingly, a small Danish corporation, Bavarian Nordics, controls the global supply of this vaccine, giving it disproportionate power and say over the distribution of this vaccine. But Jynneos was developed some half a century ago with public money. We spoke to Jyotsna Singh from People's Health Movement on the politics behind how medicines come to be developed, produced and distributed during a public health emergency. Hi Jyotsna, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us what this report explains can you explain it in detail?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for inviting me again. Yeah, so this report that has been brought out by Public Citizen, which is a US-based non-profit, I mean, it sort of confirms what people have been saying already and the kind of evidence that is being produced by the activists and civil society organizations over decades in one sense. So in the case of monkeypox, we are saying something similar we have been talking about earlier. So this report focuses on one vaccine which is being produced by a Denmark-based Bavarian Nordic pharma company. It's a very big company based from a developed country, and it is the monkeypox vaccine. So the technology of this vaccine was actually discovered almost 5 decades ago, and a lot of public funding went into it. When the companies claim that they have produced the vaccine and they have invested everything, I mean, there's nothing which is a bigger lie than that, right? So this the vaccine, a lot of research was done in the public sector, and then this company came to produce a vaccine. And now they claim that they own it, and they are not ready to share the know-how, the technical know-how, with the other companies, whereby we can actually scale up of monkeypox vaccine. The researchers actually did a deep dive into into vaccine production, what all is needed for that. They found that actually, a lot of patents for this particular vaccines have expired. So should be easier actually for the manufacturers, other manufacturers, to be able to produce the vaccine. But that is not happening because the technical know-how for the vaccine is not available, which is a very sad thing. And then you see that there are actually 9 more manufacturers who can produce this vaccine. They have the technology, they have been producing vaccines for measles and mumps and rabies using the same platform and same technology. So if they get the technical know-how, it will take them very less time to be able to scale up the production and produce this vaccine in their facilities also. And out of these 9 manufacturers, 6 are actually based in lower LMICs, lower and middle income countries. India, Brazil, South Africa, Indonesia. And if you look at the pricing, then we see that Bavarian Nordic's vaccine is estimated to be priced at something like 110 US dollars. Whereas similar vaccines are being produced by these companies as LMICs at 4 US dollars. So it's like 110 versus 4. It's a huge money we are talking about that can be saved by the public sector, by people whosoever needs this monkeypox vaccine. So I think that way the report is really revealing.
And Jyotsna, while you were talking, I think the fundamental issue that remains, whether it's monkeypox or with COVID, the production, the distribution, this sort of a monopoly over the production and distribution, it's like widespread. It's across a lot of things. And how can one tackle that?
No, absolutely. I mean, like in COVID, we saw huge inequity in access to vaccines by countries and people. I mean, we obviously have not forgotten because we just witnessed it so recently that when Africa, there were many countries in Africa who had not given even one shot to their citizens, whereas in the developed countries, you could see 60% or 70% of the populations being vaccinated. So that kind of the inequity that we saw, the reason was what we just talked about, the patents and the monopoly that the companies have over the vaccines, and they're not letting it go at all. And despite the fact that a lot of money is being paid by the taxpayers in research and development of those vaccines. So you're right, exactly the same thing is happening in the case of monkeypox. And it is not only the case of Bavarian Nordic, but other companies are also trying to hold. It is the companies in Brazil, India, who can scale up. Brazil is one of the most affected countries by monkeypox right now. We are seeing that Sri Lanka had its first case today. So we really need a scaling up of this vaccine. What the scientists also fear is that the way monkeypox is spreading, maybe, I mean, we have gotten used to the standards of COVID, but that should not become the standard of how many people get affected and die of an infectious disease. But the way it is spreading, it is going to enter communities who were never affected by it before, and that is going to be devastating because because the virus is then just spreading and we should stop it. And therefore, vaccine is going to be crucial. US is hoarding a huge number of vaccines. Instead of that, maybe we need to have more solidarity where countries which are affected, be it Mexico or Brazil or other Latin American countries, and Sudan, because the refugee camps of Sudan are badly affected by monkeypox. So we need vaccines in all these areas, and it cannot happen unless we are actually able to break barriers of all types of intellectual property, be it patents or trade secrets. On all the vaccines that are available for this. So that is the way to go forward. I think WHO should intervene. WHO should make it mandatory that the technology is shared across and the platforms are created to ensure that that happens. That's the only way out. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Jyotsna, for joining us today and for this very important update. And that's all for today's episode. For more such stories and updates from around the world, keep watching peoplesdispatch.org and also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.